What does being a vulnerable leader mean to you? And we had around 10 responses. These were the top 4. Admitting to personal mistakes or failures, acknowledging personal challenges or shortcomings, asking for help and guidance from others, and acknowledging challenges that the team or organization is faced with. The top 2 responses in the realm of manufacturing had nothing to do with work. Personal challenges and shortcomings. What are you struggling with as a human being? What are you struggling with as a human being?
Storybox audio.
Right? And I found that particularly fascinating in the realm of manufacturing because, the stereotype in the world of manufacturing is no vulnerability. Don't talk about mistakes. Don't talk about things that you might be struggling with. You need to be tough.
Storybox audio.
Another question that we asked is, how much do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Vulnerability is perceived as a leadership strength, not a weakness. Less than 8% said definitely true. 37% said they don't even know how vulnerability is viewed inside their organizations. And let's be honest, 37% who say uncertain, that's the same thing as saying we don't believe in it. Because if you're uncertain, you're not going to be vulnerable inside your organization. And the last statistic from the manufacturing world, do leaders at your organization display vulnerability when the time calls for it? 25% say always or often. Only 1.8%, less than 2%, say always. And again, the key here is when the time is appropriate. When the situation calls for it, less than 2% of leaders in manufacturing companies are vulnerable. I allow myself to be vulnerable with others at work. Only 15% said definitely true. So vulnerability is about things like asking for help. In the book, I'm going to talk about 10 things, 10 signs of vulnerability. These could be things like giving or receiving praise, listening, asking for help, admitting to a personal challenge or a struggle. All of these things are a part of vulnerability. Can you imagine that so many employees work in an organization where these things do not exist? It's a scary thing to think about. So the whole concept of leading with vulnerability and being a vulnerable leader comes down to 2 things. And this is what I call the vulnerable leader equation. Vulnerability plus leadership is vulnerable leadership. You can think about it high level. Vulnerability is about connection. This is about trust. In fact, there was a study that was done, and in academic research, there are 22 different definitions of trust, and they all have to do with making yourself vulnerable. 22 definitions of trust, all of them have to do with making yourself vulnerable. So vulnerability is about connection. It's about creating trust. Leadership is about capability, and it is about competence. You need both of these things. You need vulnerability, and you need to be capable, and you need to be competent. And the reason why I want to stress the importance of capability and competence is because vulnerability is not always a good thing, especially if you are a leader. So there's a concept in psychology called the pratfall effect. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but the pratfall effect basically states that if you are highly competent and you are good at your job, which a lot of you leaders in the organization, you are already viewed as competent. And so your employees already view you as competent, they already view you as capable. What they want to know is, are you also human? Are you also human? They know that you're good at your job because of where you are. Your VPs, your presidents, your directors, you're running lines of business. They know you're capable. They know you're competent. Do they know that you are human? So this theory in psychology called the pratfall effect basically states that if you are good at your job, and you are vulnerable and do something like admit to making a mistake, your perception of who you are as a leader goes up. You're viewed as more likable, as more trustworthy, somebody who people want to work with. But the flip side of that is also true. If you are not good at your job, and you are just mediocre, and you are vulnerable, then that vulnerability only adds to your perception of mediocrity. So this is why one of the things that I keep saying inside of organizations is we don't need more vulnerability, we need more vulnerable leadership. There's no substitute for being good at your job. Right? You can't just show up to work one day and say, I don't know how to do this, I need help with that, I'm just a mess. There's no leadership there. We don't need that inside of organizations. So there is a difference, right? And this makes a huge difference on who you are as a leader. I mean, I really do believe that the single most powerful thing that you can do for your career success, to create trust inside your organization, to drive profitability, to unlock the potential of everyone around you, is to lead with vulnerability. And I'm going to stress that for the entire day, is leading and being vulnerable at the same time.